In the 1960s, girls were expected to wear skirts or dresses, as pants were considered improper and even rebellious. This rule was so strict that some schools had guidelines on skirt length. Girls who wanted to wear pants often faced judgment or even punishment. Today, this expectation feels outdated as schools embrace more inclusive and relaxed dress codes, allowing teens to express themselves comfortably and freely. 1. The proper way to dress. Teen dress codes in the 60s were conservative by today's standards. Boys often wore collared shirts and slacks, while girls adhered to strict rules about skirt lengths and modest tops. Anything deemed too revealing was met with disapproval, and parents often acted as fashion police. The idea was to present a clean image, leaving little room for personal style. Today, teens have the freedom to dress according to their taste, and self-expression through fashion is celebrated. 2. Respect your elders at all costs. Respecting elders was not just encouraged in the 60s, it was practically demanded. Teens were expected to address adults formally and show deference to anyone older. Questioning authority was frowned upon, and challenging adults was nearly unthinkable. Now, while respect is still valued, young people are more encouraged to think critically and speak up if they disagree with something, leading to a more open and balanced dialogue between generations. 3. Dating with chaperones. In the 60s, going on dates usually meant that a parent or a trusted adult was close by, ensuring that everything stayed appropriate. Teens often went on group dates or were required to check in frequently if they were out with a romantic interest. Today, teens typically enjoy much more independence in their dating lives, with a greater focus on trust and open communication between parents and their kids. 4. Girls only wear dresses to school. Pants were rarely part of a teenage girl's school wardrobe in the 60s. Dresses and skirts were the standard, with strict rules about skirt lengths to ensure modesty. Girls had little room to explore clothing options and were expected to look ladylike at all times. Nowadays, school dress codes are more relaxed, and girls can choose from various styles, including jeans and shorts, allowing them to prioritize comfort and personal style. 5. Curfews were non-negotiable. Curfews were a strict rule in the 60s, often enforced down to the minute. Parents expected their teens to be home by a set time, and being even a few minutes late could lead to consequences. This rule was about safety, but also about maintaining a good image in the community. Today, many teens negotiate their curfews based on trust and responsibility, with parents more willing to allow flexibility based on maturity and the occasion. 6. No talking back to adults. In the 60s, talking back to an adult was seen as a major sign of disrespect. Teens were expected to listen quietly to adults, even if they disagreed, with little room to express their own opinions openly. This rule reinforced strict hierarchies in families and communities. Nowadays, open conversations between generations are encouraged, with teens more empowered to speak up and engage in discussions rather than passively accept authority. 7. No physical contact in public. Public displays of affection were strongly discouraged in the 60s. Even holding hands was sometimes viewed as too forward, and kissing or hugging in public was often considered inappropriate. Teen relationships were expected to be low-key and discreet. In modern times, expressions of affection are seen as normal and accepted in most places, allowing teens to feel more comfortable showing affection without fear of judgment. 8. Good manners were a must. Good manners, like saying please and thank you or opening doors for others, were emphasized as essential social skills in the 60s. Teens were taught to follow a formal code of etiquette in nearly every setting. Although good manners are still valued today, they're often more relaxed, with less rigid rules and a stronger focus on genuine kindness and respect rather than simply following protocol. 9. Church attendance was expected. For many teens in the 60s, attending church with the family wasn't optional, it was expected. Weekly church services were considered a moral duty, and skipping them was out of the question for most families. Today, religious practices are more diverse, and teens often have more freedom to explore different beliefs or choose not to attend at all, reflecting broader shifts toward personal choice in religious and spiritual life. 10. Strict rules about hair and appearance. Hairstyles for teens in the 60s were expected to be clean-cut and conservative, especially for boys. Long hair or unusual styles were frowned upon, and schools often enforced strict grooming standards. Girls were expected to look neat and tidy, with minimal makeup and styling. Nowadays, hair and appearance are seen as outlets for self-expression, and teens experiment freely with styles, colors, and trends without the same pressure to conform. 11. Modesty in speech and behavior. Teens in the 60s were encouraged to be modest and avoid any language or behavior considered inappropriate. Swearing, loud talking, or overly expressive behavior was often discouraged, especially for girls. Parents and teachers emphasized modesty as a virtue. In contrast, today's teens are more likely to embrace self-expression openly, often using humor, slang, or bold language to communicate, with society placing less emphasis on strict, polite language. 12. No living together before marriage. In the 60s, the idea of living together before marriage was almost unheard of and strongly frowned upon by society. This was viewed as inappropriate and even scandalous, especially for young couples. Today, cohabitation is common and often considered a practical step for many couples before marriage. Society has become more accepting of different relationship paths, allowing teens to make choices based on personal values rather than strict social norms. 13. Girls were expected to learn household skills. In the 60s, young women were often taught skills like cooking, cleaning, and sewing as essential preparation for marriage and homemaking. These skills were viewed as critical for girls but not as emphasized for boys, reinforcing gender roles. Today, household skills are taught to all genders, with an emphasis on independence and self-sufficiency, allowing teens to develop skills that serve them regardless of traditional gender expectations. 14. Avoiding certain topics in conversation. Certain subjects, like politics, religion, or money, were often off-limits for teens in the 60s, especially around adults. The idea was to avoid controversial topics and keep conversations polite and neutral. Nowadays, teens are encouraged to engage in these discussions, learning to think critically about important issues and develop their own viewpoints. This shift allows for more open, honest conversations, preparing teens to be informed and engaged citizens. 15. Privacy was limited. In the 60s, teens had much less privacy than they do now. Parents often kept close tabs on their children's whereabouts, friends, and even phone conversations. Privacy wasn't considered a right, but rather a privilege that parents controlled. Today, with advances in technology and evolving parenting philosophies, teens have more personal space and are granted greater privacy, fostering independence while encouraging responsibility and trust within the family.